Hi guys, welcome. I'm Carly from Carly's Creative Clay. Sorry I haven't been here for a few weeks. I've been really giddy and feeling sick I have no idea what's going on. Still feeling that way, but I practice claying in this state and I'm managing it. So I thought I'd come back and have a go. So before I get started with this tree armature, which I'll explain in a second, I'm going to show you the finished project from our last lot of videos, which was the mountain troll, rock troll. So I'm really pleased. I think the varnish just makes him come out even more clearly. And when I open my Etsy shop, obviously he'll be up for sale. There is only one of them, so whoever gets there will end up with it, but I'm very pleased with them. Oh, and the bottom is just plain black. Right, so the plan for this week is I'm going to show you how to make a tree. Once I've got the tree made, next week I'm going to make a koala to put in it. Now this will be the biggest tree I've made so far. Before now they've been a lot shorter. I want to show you how I made this armature. An armature, by the way, is a skeleton or anything structural inside of something to give it stability and support. The reason we make them for our polymer clay items is because the clay in the oven gets softer before it gets harder and sets into its plastic form, and things can fall apart in the oven. I know, I've literally watched it. I made a T-Rex and watched its arms fall off and then it fell sideways. Not happy. That was before the time where I learnt about armatures. So a tree armature, this one I've made from florist wire that is 19 gauge. Now, in order to make it, I needed to use 2 pairs of pliers, and it was a big old affair because it's a large tree. So I thought what I would do is show you it on 19 gauge wire, which is a lot thinner, so I should be able to do it by hand. So you need to start with 8 strands of wire. If you're going for more branches, you may end up in the long run needing more strands of wire, and you'll see how to work out how many you need, because it's basically a math of halving your wires as you go up to each split. So you're going to start out, if you can twist all the wires together in one big clump, great. I've found that is really quite difficult to do, so I always start out with 2. You're going to need to portion off a section for the bottom. And the reason why I have, if you can see, that fan shape, well, snowflake, I don't know, all the wires in a circle like that, is so that when I make the base, I can embed that between 2 layers of clay, and just like the roots of a tree, it will give structural stability and keep this upright even if it takes a knock. So decide how long you're going to make those bits that stick out. That really depends on the size of your tree and the size of your base. So a lot of this will depend on your project. I'm going for a couple of centimetres. So you hold at the base of that and then you start to twist your wires together. Let's get 1 pair of pliers, it's easier than holding it with my fingers. So like that, hold it, start twisting your wires together to the height that you want the trunk of the tree. So I'm going to go up about that far because it's going to be a small one, this one. See? You've got your two sticking up there. Then you're going to go in and add your next one. Make sure it's the same length of bottom. Hold it again with your pliers, and if you're doing it with thicker wire, all you're doing really is using a second pair of pliers to help you twist. And can you see I'm just twisting it around the other two like that till you get to the height that you wanted. Repeat for all the rest of them. So adding in clamping at the same height as you did the rest, and the more you add in, you've got to make sure that the one that you're twisting isn't sort of wobbling on your pliers, but you'll get used to that. You just sort of hold it right. Takes a few goes sometimes because where the main group of wires is thicker than the individual one that you're twisting onto it, you can find that the clamp holds a big bit and the wire you're adding just sort of wiggles away, but you'll be able to sort that out. If you want, if you're impatient, you can add in two at a time. Again, get them lined up. So with that, just make sure you've got all your wires firm at the bottom. Get the two that you're adding in and then start twisting them around. See how they can come loose if you're not careful. So like that. And because this is going inside your clay, you haven't got to worry so much about how neat the twisted wire is. People make actual tree sculptures this way and they line up all the wires so that they're uniform, so you haven't got that sort of scruffy look going there, but it's all going inside your clay, so don't take the time on it, it's not worth it. Last two in like so. And it gets a lot easier once you've got them all joined together like this. Do be careful with your ends, especially if you're making a very large tree and you've got a lot of wire sticking out. It's so easy to scratch yourself and poke yourself in the eye. If you're worried, wear safety goggles. I mean, look, I've already scratched up my arm. And there, that was me doing the last armature, the big one. So believe me when I say be careful about it. So we're now at that stage. What you then got to do is divide these so that you've got 4 in one side and 4 in the other. 2, 3, 4, like that. And really pull them down so you're at the bottom of that twist. Yeah, so really separating them out. Then you hold just at that joint like that. I like to hold a bit diagonal, and then you're going to twist these together. Now if your other clump is in the way, just bend them out the way. You're gonna be bending anyway. Sorry, just twisting them together. It may help if you've got a pair of pliers, and again same with the other side. You can also hold from the top and twist like that and use your fingers to pinch at the joint. But you want this V to be about the same size on each of them. See? So they're about the same length. So you're now down to that. Then you're going to split each of the ends in half. So let's get that bend out of the way. Hi Artie Hearty Life, lovely to see you. I'm just showing how to make a tree armature. So at that bend you're now going to twist these up like so. If you rotate with that hand and that hand, you'll get the twist quicker, but you're more likely to poke yourself, so be careful.
Yeah, poking oneself is
so like that, a bit further up. Then we're doing the same on the other two. Then I'll move over and do that side so that it's symmetrical. And if you look at a tree without leaves on, you will see this sort of V'ing out formation going on. So it actually is kind of what nature does, but I don't think they're halving wires. Right, sometimes you can see the wires get a little bit tangled on each other, so you've just got to straighten them up to work out which two are closest to each other in order to get the split right. So I would say untwist that there, twist that there. Right, there we go. Like so. Can be a bit fiddly, but it's nowhere near as hard as something like lace making.
If you can twist all those wires while busy, you can do anything. You can do my head in.
Oh, I'm very good at getting used to things. I've got a lot of health problems, and it seems to be a number one thing my doctor does, that when I go to her and say I've got this new problem, they basically say, that's horrible, learn to live with it. So I'm like the master at learning to behave normally, even though everything's a bit messed up. I mean, I kind of freaked my dentist out on Monday, because you probably don't notice it, but I had a root canal on Monday, and he said that when they started it, he said if it gets too much or there's any problems, raise your hand and we'll stop. There, a couple of hours, no hand raising. He said this usually people have to do it in 2 or 3 sessions rather than go through the whole thing at once. I'm like, I get more pain in my arms than that. I don't get it. They make it sound terrible in the sort of media, but no, it really isn't. Well, I don't think it is, but I'm used to pain, so it's just another symptom. So we've got our 2 V's coming off the main V. So as you can see, lots of big wire, so be careful, it's easy to stab yourself. These now are going to get separated, but before you do, at the top of your twist, try and make a gap like that, and then bring the wire back over and twist twice like that. You see, little loop, and I'll show you what that's for in a second. Let's just do that on the others. It doesn't have to be perfect. All you need to be able to do with that loop is fit 2 wires through it. So if you got a pokey tool or a needle tool, you can use that to widen them out if it didn't work by you holding and twisting. So there we go. You only need about 1 or 2 twists just to secure it. Like that. There we go. apparently I have got an appointment going to happen with an ear, nose and throat specialist, but I'm not holding my breath for the way things are going corona wise. I think by the time my non-urgent appointment comes up, they're going to be busy with other stuff. Right, so we've got these 4 loops going. What you're going to do then is take each strand, and push it through the loop like that, and bring that down to whatever height you want the last sticky outy bit to be. So that'll do. Do the same with the other side. Back over through that hole. Doesn't really matter which direction through the hole it goes, just that it goes. Pinch that down. Now you're left with 2 wires over that way. What you're going to then do is bring them together and wrap them around a few times to secure it. Whoop. And I tell you, this was not easy this stage when you had thicker wire. I warn you, you do curse a bit, but it's worth it. So you like that, you can then cut off your excess. Where's my wire cutters? I had them a second ago. These ones would do. Sorry about that. There we go, some wire cutters. Cut off the excess like that. Do keep your endy bits of wire, don't throw them away, because you can use them in other things. All you need is a centimetre or so to hold something like a head on a main body. So yeah, put them to one side. Now you've got 2 sharp pointy sticky outy bits. Let's hold this up, can you see there under my finger? Ooh. Yeah, use your pliers and fold them down flat. Sorry, pinch it until they're flat. Right, that's pretty secure now. We are going to cover it in masking tape. We will come back and sort these tips out, but I'm going to quickly do that on the other 3. So through like that to a reasonable length. Right, let's be quick about it. Whoop. It's a bit like sewing sometimes, trying to get the wires through. Like that. Now I'm going to move that one well out of the way whilst I wrap these around. And I was thinking about just talking you through and not actually showing all this, but on a few polymer clay groups that I'm on, there have been people asking, how do you make an armature for a tree? And so I thought I would go through the whole process. There we go, cut that off, them to one side, push that wire flat. It also helps that you can squeeze if the wire didn't wrap round tight enough and you've got a bulge. If you pinch it a bit, you can flatten that out. Right, last 2 go in like that. Now I've stopped at this height, but if you added more wires, you could then carry that branching a lot further up if you wanted to make a far larger canopy on your tree. But since I actually want to be able to see this koala that I'm going to place in it, I'm going to keep the canopy at this kind of smallness. Right. But these are design decisions. You just got to be able to work out how many V's off you're going to have, and each of the time it's going to divide down in half.
It's really cool to see the process.
Thank you. It's probably a standard process. I didn't watch a tutorial for it, I just literally come up with it. But it looks like the most sensible way of doing this, so I'm pretty sure that other people must have come up with this idea. But it's entirely possible to make a tree without an armature. But if you want sort of gaps between the foliage to show, it's going to have points that are structurally very unsound if you don't put some wire work in. There we go. Right, the other thing I would say, if you're picking florist wire for the first time off of eBay or Amazon or whatever, the numbers that they give you, the higher the number, the thinner the wire. So it really is a bit counterintuitive. So if you want a very thick wire, you'd go for like a 12, 18, 19, that sort of level. If you want a very, very thin wire, you're up to high 20s, early 30s. So that's all that twisted down. I made that mistake when I first got florist wire and ended up with a lot of wire that was really too thin to be structurally stable for anything. I got some, it's like almost like wire hair. I can't use it for nothing. I'm gonna have to find a use for it. Right, okay, so we're down to that. Now we're on to these little branch outs. So we're going to fold them out like so and position them a little bit more. Then all you're doing is you're going to take the end, flatten it down so that you can pinch it and twist them. Don't forget to hold at the joint of the V, or you'll end up messing with what you've already done. And the twist, the reason why I'm doing it and not just leaving the wire straight is it makes it more structurally stable. It gives a ridged surface so that your masking tape can grip, and it also thins down the wire thickness. So if you see, that's quite thick because there's a big gap in between it as opposed to a twisted one. Yeah, so I think it's worth the effort, but it's up to you how far you go on this. The one warning I would say is if you over twist the wire and it gets too tight, it will just snap, and then you've got a broken piece that you're trying to thread in and make structurally secure. So don't try and get it with as many twists as you possibly can in that stretch of metal. Oops. And I'm doing all this with no depth perception as well, because one of my eyes wanders all over the place and it causes me problems. So that's why I keep slipping. But you get there. See? Like that. Now the reason I do that tuck in and end up with the sharp points on the middle of the branch like that is because it's so easy to stab yourself whilst you're working with the ends. And the last thing you want to do, especially if you're giving this to someone else or selling it, is have the possibility that a bit of the very tip of a branch chips off and then leaves a sharp point out of the ornament for someone to stab themselves on. So try and enclose your sharp ends as much as you can, is what I say. Right, let's tighten up down that base there. Right, so it's a little bit of a fiddly job, but I find it's easier to make a good armature than it is to try and fix a broken sculpture. You can do it. You've got to be very precise with your gluing so you haven't got glue showing. You've got to then try and hide in the break. So I usually either try to colour match in with paint the same colour as the area that the crack's through once I've filled it and glued it properly, or I will bake up some clay that is the same colour and then put that in with a mixture of epoxy and the powdered baked clay. You can do that. If it hasn't got varnish, it's so much easier to fix up. Once you've varnished it, it makes it really difficult. Oh, one more set I didn't even open up. The little things you've got to spot when you're talking. It's easy to distract yourself. Right, so there are a number of ways of fixing up, and fixing broken polymer clay is a skill in and of itself that took me ages and many failed experiments to get mostly right, but I still avoid it like the plague. Because you can't just use super glue. Super glue reacts badly with polymer clay and it ends up denaturing. And what's annoying about it is it doesn't do it immediately a lot of the time. You end up coming back to a piece a few months later and there's a massive white mark across your creation, further than actually where you glued. It's like a mark that spreads and the glue's all destabilized and fallen off. Not fun. Right, so we've now got our tree looking wire. Then all you've got to do is fold out your supports into the circle shape, and I try to make it so that they're facing in a direction that doesn't cause the bottom to untwist. So sometimes I've got to do a rejig like this, put it down flat and then position where you want them and spread them all out. So tree, that's how you do it. Then you literally cover it all in masking tape, and the reason for that is the masking tape, it's easier to make it lay flat under your polymer clay without any metal sticking through. So let's get my pliers out the way. So I'm going to move this back so we're on the whiteboard again. It's just, see how hard it is to see the actual armature on that whiteboard. That's why I put a bit of chipboard down, just so you can have a look better. So I want to make a grass looking base, so we're making swirly clay. I know I've done it a lot, but people still asked if I don't show in the video because they don't want to jump out of one video to look at how I did something in another video. So all you're doing to create these is twisting like this. You're looking at either stacking up 3 sticks of clay or putting 2 sticks of clay together. The moment you add more than 3, it doesn't work, I've found. So like this, there, if you've got 9-10 colours, just divide it down into 3s and 2s.
Sorry, Hedgehog says you make it look so easy.
Really? Yay! I'm glad about this. So now I'm twisting these up. You can start at this level, but you can, if you push the clay together, get an even tighter swirl going. It doesn't matter if you break the clay like that. If it crumbles, you just push it back together and then hold along the joint and continue twisting, because the joint will be weaker, but that won't matter in the long run because it's about to get mixed into a whole lot more clay. So once you've got a relatively tight swirl, I spent a lot more time on these to bring them down to that tight, but this will do fine. Make sure you twist right up to the tips or you'll end up with this big out of place block of colour. You're then going to stack your twisted sticks up.
Says, the more often I see it in a tutorial, the better I get it in my mind.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad it's actually helpful. And again, these you're stacking no more than 3 together. If you've got, say, 5, you're going to do 2 lots of stacks and then twist them and then integrate them together. Does that make sense? So you can really have as much as you want. If it falls apart, just push it back together like that and you're going to roll these up. And the twist has got to go all the way to the end. This is breaking apart more than it normally does because I conditioned this before I got ill with all my health issues. But it's showing that you can just literally push it back together and spin it on itself. It will get conditioned as we go through this process, so you don't have to worry too much. Just get a nice tight twist up. Then fold it in half, twist them on themselves. Keep doing that until you can't fold it in half anymore, which will probably be somewhere around here. I can just about roll it over. See, you end up with a big lump like that. Now, once you pushed all the air out and got it to stick together as a proper ball, you roll it out. This gives you, each stage of this gives you a different effect, and I'll show you what each of them are because it's only quick to do. So at this stage, I like to call it my camouflage print. So when you, helps if I actually chop into it the blade side, it looks like camo. Yeah, very large patches of colour still, but I want that a lot thinner than that. So blade out the way, push my 2 halves back together, and we're going to turn that into one long stick. Now, depending on how many colours you've got and how big this block is, will depend on how long your stick is and how many times you've got to fold it over and twist. I think my record was when I was making a massive dragon to go around a vase, and I literally did this with enough clay that it ended up, the clay block was the size of a loaf of bread, and not a small loaf of bread, the 800 grams. Right, once you've got it out into a stick, you're going to hold one end and twist it on itself to get these nice tight spirals. Again, all the way to the end, like so. Then in half, twist on itself. And if you notice, I'm holding one end and I'm rolling with a flat hand. It is far easier on your wrist than doing that motion. You do that, and first of all, it takes a lot longer. Second of all, you'll only get through probably one stage of this before your wrist needs you to put it in hot water and take painkillers. So whenever you're doing anything craft wise, think about ergonomics. Yeah, I do love those colours together too, Arty Life. I use them a lot. It's how I do grass, and I do so many animal scenes that end up with a grass base. Sorry, I'm croaky, by the way. Can you see how suddenly that gives you a much different swirl? You can go one tighter than that, and it goes very, very small.
Did you see the Armature Labs message?
Yes. Let's see. That looks in a brown. That's one I've done that I brought it out and twisted it for a third time. So it goes really, really small. I don't want to go that small. I'm going to stay at this stage. I'm sounding like Selma from The Simpsons again. Right. Having the lines like this, you can just roll it out smooth and it's a nice pattern. And I have used that many times. But what I like to do is use what's on the inside. And how I found to do that, so that you're not going to waste any clay and the whole block is going to have that pattern all the way through, is chopping off, form it into a rough square, cube rather. And you're going to chop the outside off. And before you freak out and say, I thought you said there's not going to be any waste, that's a hell of a lot of waste. Give me a minute. You're going to then put it back, the liney side facing inwards. So the pattern you want is facing on the outside. Now, don't need to fit them perfectly back into their squares. You can even overlap some of the bits you haven't chopped off properly and make it not touching, just so long as that old pattern isn't showing anywhere. Just put them back on. Now, I've been doing this apparently 5 years. Oh, watch out for that. Can you see there's a lip? And those old lines are showing through. If I roll that out, there's a risk that that will fold over and you'll end up with a big section of lines. So just make sure you tap down those ends. So it's got no choice but to stay hidden. Yeah, I've been at this 5 years, which is a surprise to me. I thought I'd only been at it 4, but I wrote down the date that I opened my Etsy shop. Yeah, 5 years ago. All that time, every time I've cut into one of these blocks, and if you look through my history, I use this technique all the time. It's probably one of my most used patterns on clay. I've never ever found those outside lines before. Again, once you've got it all stuck together, I suppose it's possible to recut into it so you're exactly with that very thin surface design, but yeah, not a thing really. Now, if like this you end up going, that's not enough clay for the base I want, I'll show you what to do for that as well. Whoop. Now, first off, let's get some greaseproof paper to work off of. I thought I got some. Sorry, I'm going to need to just tear off a bit of paper from my roll. Usually I do this off camera, but there you go. Right, because you don't want it sticking to your board and having to release it with a knife all the time. We're gonna, first off, we need to divide our clay in half. And can you see the designs all the way through? Now, they put you. This first one we're going to format into quite a large round flat base rolling pin. And I'm doing that with a rolling pin. And you do a couple of rolls and then turn, and that's how you end up with an evenly rolled out piece. Now I'm going to take this pretty thin because I want it quite big, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill some of this extra space in with scrap clay to give it back some of its thickness. And it's a way you can keep your pattern without having to make up pattern clay. Right, the other thing, can you see the side I've rolled has this much more stretched design than the side that was against the paper? That's all down to the flexibility of polymer clay, and literally always happens. If you want the stretch design on both sides, you'll have to pick it up and flip it over and roll some more. If you want the tight design on both sides, you need to take it to a level 3 twisting, so it's a lot more tighter because they spread out when you roll. It's just what happens. So take that, add to the size that I want, which is, that looks about right to me. So I'm going to put that down. Then I'm going to get some scrap clay. So let's grab some brown I've got over here for the bark. Take a little end bit of different colours. That'll do. And literally it doesn't matter what colours you're using, it's never going to show through unless the piece gets smashed in half. So you're good. That'll do. Right, get this together, form it into a ball like that. Air bubbles are not your friend. It's not as bad as with ceramics, where if there's the smallest air bubble it's going to explode in a kiln. That never happens, but you do have the risk of cracking, and you have got a weak point there. So I'm just going to flatten that out a bit more so it's to the size that I want it, but again I don't want it to overlap that base, so probably that looks about right. And I'm not rolling it out with a rolling pin on purpose. I want it to be different thicknesses so it looks more like ground. So what I'm going to do is put that there, get my tree, and I'm going to push these into that brown clay as firmly as I can. You can use tools to help you, but you really want that to be embedded well. And that's all going to help make sure this thing stays upright for as long as you want it to. Then I'm going to use my fingers and close over some of that clay over the wires. Hasn't got to be perfect, it's just a start. We're going to cover most of it with this. Now I want to take that edge from being such a big lip, just push it down so it's a bit more of a gradual decline, like that. If you have rolled out enough of your pattern clay, you can just use divide that into 3. Now, this is the bit that I find is the trickiest. So we're going to take this out into, let's use the paper. We're going to take this out so that it's more of a circle and more of the thickness you want. So like you did with the base. Another word of caution that I learned as a silly mistake from my own not thinking about it. I did do this with a set of coasters I made and didn't think about it. Put some scrap clay on the inside, made it up, they looked great, baked them, remembered that one of the colours was mixed basically with translucent polymer clay. It worked out well because what I'd done, the central filler was like rainbow coloured because it has a lot of different scraps. The outside was meant to look marbled, black and white and grey swirled together, and so the little patches of colour that showed through kind of look really pretty. But if you are using translucent, it will show through your filler clay. So bear that in mind. You might want to use the same type of clay that you did on the outside if you're needing to fill. Right, what I'm going to do now is out of that circle, get an idea of where I want that the middle to be. Just use my blade and cut a line. Like that. Then that is going onto your base with the tree in the middle. Then once you've got it lined up how you want, you're going to get these edges, bring them down and smooth in. And you can make that join line vanish just by using your thumb, pressing down, smoothing out, spend a bit of time and just make it look like it was never more than one piece. See, rolling pins and tools can help. So let me get my jar of favourite tools out. That's the one I like. It's got a little metal spatula type majiggy, and you can just go along that join line around the side and blend it all in. Takes a bit, but it's worth it. See how it all just vanishes away? But this again becomes difficult if you've got a very uniform pattern that you don't want any distortion with. Distortion on swirly clay just looks like swirly clay. If it was something like a cane design, make it bigger than the base, lay it over and then tuck it under, and then turn it upside down and do the smoothing on the bottom and put a different colour over the top to look like a solid coloured base that will hide all the messiness. Does that make sense? But on this you can literally get away with doing it like this. Right, now let's tidy up those edges like so. I will probably spend some time once we are done today just fiddling around and making that base look perfect. But you can see I'm almost there anyway. I'm just a bit of a perfectionist with this, so I fiddle around and flute edges and stuff like that. Do have a feel. If you can feel an air bubble moving around in there, if you've trapped air, use a pin tool or something to stab down to get that air out, then push the clay back together and smooth it over. Don't want trapped air in that base. It will make it far more unstable. You can also, once you've done that, you can go around and texture it. Fimo have produced lots of really cheap texture sheets, and you'll find stuff just around the house that's useful. So packaging that's got different designs on it, especially from the bakery aisle, I find sort of the cake sections are really good for different packaging with different textures. I like this one for grass. It's basically like a load of wavy lines, and all you do is make sure that you're facing the same direction with all of it, and just rub, lift, move it round, rub and lift. You can also come in with ball tools and use those to make texture, or lots of stuff around the house. I've seen people use all sorts of things to put a bit of texture into their clay so it's not so smooth. I'll show you this once I've gone around and got it all kind of covered. There we go. Right, let's see, can we get that on camera? Can you see now it's got more of a liney sort of texture to it? Yeah? It just helps you convince people it's grass a bit more. I will go around again and make sure that that's a little better. But now we're going to put a bit of brown around on the bark, and this is actually one of the easier things to do because you're not looking for smooth joins anywhere. Let's get all my browns that I've rolled out. Here we go. Lots of browns. So I've gone ochre, chocolate and yellow, terracotta with a small bit of chocolate, terracotta with a larger amount of chocolate, chocolate and black, chocolate and white. And you can see chocolate and white does very different to chocolate and yellow. It makes more of a stony, mossy sort of look. That's the plain chocolate one. That is Bordeaux and chocolate. That's just Bordeaux on its own. I said that one already. That's chocolate and black. This is a offcut of some of that swirly clay that I did for a different project in brown, and I can always add patches of that. So I've got a whole range of browns that I can work from. Let's get that little spiky tree I made out of the way before I stab myself on bits. What you're going to do, I use my craft knife for this. You're going to cut bits off different colours of brown, and we're just going to randomly add them around. So start down at the base, make sure it's firmly attached, then you can break you can break, you can use knives, you can overlap, you can do different shapes. Just get it covered and make sure it's firmly attached to your armature without any air bubble. Now, try not make the shapes look too uniform, and tearing it gives you that nice sort of rough, jagged edge. That can be really pretty on all this. So I tear and then use that rough edge so that it's visible along the outside. And we will come round and put more texture in and a bit more colours in so that it looks right, but this is just your base layer going on, and you don't have to go all the way around with a colour. So can you see so far they are not uniform? You are not looking for uniform, and you don't have to completely make full rings out of your pieces. You can go up one side and then join on some more. So let's split you open like that, put a bit in there. So it's probably the most unstressful bit of freehanding you can do, I think, is making a gnarly looking tree, because you can't do it wrong. Yeah, so when I'm having a very tired day, trees are a good one for me to make. Obviously the armature shouldn't be made the same day if you're tired, because you're going to stab yourself. But yeah, try and fold it on itself and make swirlies and knots, all sorts of whatever you can to make your tree a little more interesting than just a solid colour. The other option is you can do it in one colour, probably a darker colour, put a lot of texture into it, and then come along after it's baked and dry brush it, which is where you load paint, acrylic paint, onto your brush where it's barely covering the brush, and then you just drag it along the raised surfaces to leave a kind of almost like a lighter highlight. That can look very good on trees. It looks really good on stone, but trees it works particularly well with. Anything so it doesn't just look like you made a brown stick. So you're going to do that all the way up. We're going to build it over everything that is white, and that's the other reason for using a white armature, so covering it in masking tape, is because you can then see when any of it's sticking out and not looking right. I have before, when I've done a piece that is made of white, and if you see my videos and my content, very few, I work with white as least as possible because it shows up every bit of dust ever. But if I've got to do that, I will consider using a different colour tape. So long as it don't burn in the oven, you're good. So let's use a bit of this on it just to give another look. So we're going up like that. Whoop. There we are. So because you want to see if you've got anything that's not clay covered. Now, can you see it's building up pretty quickly? I'm trying to make sure I don't use the same colours next to each other too much, so that it does look far more interesting, I think. There are trees that aren't gnarly, that are really smooth, and they're kind of boring. Well, they are to me anyway. So I think you'll find that pretty much all the trees I've made have this sort of gnarled, cracked up, old look to them. But we're almost there. We're at the first V. So, with that, you've got to make sure that, as well as covering everything, you're not taking up too much of the space in that V. So if you're going to make your clay very thick, think about that when you make your armature, and make the V less tight, widen it out, because the last thing you want is it to look almost squared. So let's come up the sides, so, like that. You'll see what I mean as I start putting it on. If I don't break off some colours, it's weird. Even though I've got it all set up, I like breaking off little bits, then just picking up the bits as I go. So I've got some of that. Let's put some lighter one in, like this. It's so therapeutic. But I do find that when I do this, my mind wants to wander onto all sorts of things. Even stuff that I didn't think I was thinking about, I find myself thinking about when I do something like this. Whereas with a piece like the mountain troll, where it's a lot of exact work, you've really got to keep your mind on your project at all times, or you're going to mess it up. So it's nice just to come up with something for once that you really haven't got to put a lot of thought in. Right, I'm on that V. Oh, underside's not covered. You will find, if you haven't done what I've done, which is cover the paper in lots of little bits, holding it upside down sometimes will help you just spot that whether there's anything not covered. Like there is just there. So yeah, gotta have a sharp eye, but you'll get there. Now,
Evil Monkey Spaz says, hope you're feeling okay, Carly. I'm here watching now.
hi Evil Monkey Spaz, lovely to have you. I'm feeling as bad as I did on day one, but I've spent time getting used to the feeling and I'm functional with it now. So I'm just basically pretending I haven't got it until I get a phone appointment or whatever with the ear, nose and throat people. I was umming and ahhing about staying off of clay because I know it's not good to use blades when you're giddy, and it's not good to send a message on YouTube, but you should. A bit of a special case because I'm used to this sort of thing, but they're saying they said to me, if you haven't heard anything in 3 weeks, phone your GP back up. So that seems to suggest this is going to take many weeks. Whenever they say that to me, you've got to phone the doctors back up at least once, usually a couple of times, before you actually get your appointment through. And thus far, there's only been about 5 or 10 times in my life where they have actually found something wrong that they could treat. Generally, it's that's interesting. We have no idea why that's happening. You're going to have to just hope it goes away or get on with it.
The Monkey Spaz said, glad you're functional. I hope they pull their finger out soon.
Yeah, I doubt it, because I think we're about to end up with a massive influx of people with seasonal flu and COVID issues all combined to cause one big old storm of mess for them. So I reckon they're going to be sorting that out rather than my mild giddiness. As they should, really. I understand completely, but I ain't going to wait for it because I'm not prepared to stop streaming for potentially months. I like this too much. It's horrible when I spent time away from doing this, actually. And what's been even weirder, I didn't know I had this issue. I've been making a competition entry, and one of the rules of the competition is you can't share anything about your piece until after the competition's judged, because the Polymer clay world is such a small place. It's probable you're going to know the judges, and they don't want to feel like they've been biased, which is entirely reasonable. I'm finding it so weird making something and not taking photos of my work. At least just photos. So what I'm doing is I'm photographing it, and once it's all drawn and done with, regardless whether I win or lose, I am going to be then getting pictures up online. But I'm making it now and it isn't drawn until the start of next year. So yeah, that one. I'm not showy about any other area of my life, to be honest. You don't get to see many things about anniversaries or deaths or all that sort of stuff. But my work I like to share because it means a lot to me. We're almost through coating this. I know it looks kind of patchy at the moment, but once we come in and start doing some texture on it all, it will look a lot better. It will look far less like lots of bumps of different colour. Let me hold it up so I can show you where I'm at so far. Yeah? So it definitely comes along very quickly. And you can see what I mean. If you hold it upside down, there's a little gap there. Let's hold it up. You can spot tiny gaps where white is poking through. Let's see if I can find a more obvious one. Here, that's a good one. Can you see? Oh, yeah. Can you see there? Tiny gap? Just there, where my finger is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Go around, have a hunt down. Plug them in. It really is. I never took a proper break, even when I was rough. I think I didn't clay for about 2 days. But it wasn't long from me feeling unwell to me talking to my doctors and them saying there's not a lot they can do about it. They'll give me anti-sickness. They won't give me anything for giddiness. So I was like, well, what am I waiting for? What's the point in sitting in bed? Let's get on with getting on. So I did. I've learnt to get really good that instead of bending over to pick things up, you know when you sort of do a squat? So from a standing position, your back's still straight and you sort of bend your knees. That seems to be working for me, doing that. So, yeah, it's all good. There are worse things out there. I don't need to keep going on about all this. But, yeah. I'm just happy that I can come back. I think if anything happened that made me fully stop claying, I would be absolutely devastated by it. There's not much that devastate me in my life. Right, coming up to that tip. So remember, you want to cover over the tip as well as around the sides of it. So let's find some more clay. Bring it up a bit more. Shape it in. Right. So we've got a little point there to do. Now what I like to do with that is I get the clay, I flatten it out into like a little disc type shape, like that, and then I put it over the top and fold it into the rest. Then you can pinch and pull it into more of a point.
Evil monkey's pad says,
Like that.
I feel the same when I cannot knit. Just had 2 months no needles in my hands. It was horrible. I'm still not able to do it as well at the moment, but slowly picking it up again.
I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you managed to find a way to get back at it. It's really hard when you end up with something new that drags you away from your normal. But you gotta keep with things that make you happy, especially in this day and age. Things are too stressful. If we give up on what makes us happy, we really are on track for mental health problems. I know I'm a person who suffers with depression, so I know I've got to keep my mind as happy as it can be.
Evil monkey's pad says, I'm just doing a bit at a time to see how I feel and then carry on when I can.
It sounds like a sensible way to do it, yeah.
It's better.
Here we go. Whoop. Took the tip off there. Right, let's do that little cap thing again. Over the tip. And point. Right. So, just getting the shape that I want, and I'll hold that up and show you. Come on, all the little bits off of there. First branch. Yeah? Now, the plan is, once I've got all the brown on and I've done all the texturing, I've got a load of different heart-shaped things like blown glass and metal charms and that sort of stuff, because I want to put a heart on the front of the tree. I didn't know what size this is going to be until I actually finish making it. Sorry about that. Someone sounds like they're emptying rubbish out there. But I plan to embed a heart in the front of the tree. Is the plan. Right, how long have we been at this so I don't keep you all going and you're bored? No response from a Jamie.
Sorry.
How long have we been doing?
1 hour 13 minutes.
Hour 13.
14.
That's alright. I've gone up to around the 2 hours without anyone massively complaining, so we're good.
Sorry, I'm just a bit sleepy.
Yeah, well, it's at the moment it's coming into winter, and I'm sure humans used to hibernate
Feels like it.
because we all get extra sleepy around this time of year. I know I certainly do.
I think I'll feel better once I've eaten.
Yeah, dinner always makes us feel better. I got kippers tonight.
I just like listening to you.
Thank you. It comes together pretty quickly though, doesn't it? We're almost done coating a tree. Let's put a bit more brown there because that looks a bit too yellow and orange. There we go. And you really can layer this up. So if you wanted a thicker trunk, you can put more clay on, or you can wrap it in tin foil to get some of that thickness before you masking tape. They're both legitimate options. Do remember, if you're going for the lots more clay version, that you're going to need to bake it longer because it's thicker.
You might want to pull it. Wait,
Sorry, let's pull it over.
I can center the camera.
Let's pull it over. Right. We're almost there.
Healthy Life says Jake is making pizza. The dough is in the bread machine. Fresh pizza.
Fresh bread machine. Bread. I'm generally like to cook. I would say that's an accurate statement. Yeah. When I've got the energy, I'm definitely like to spend my time doing that. But I've never made fresh bread, and I want to give it a go. One day I'm gonna get a recipe. It was one of the things I thought, oh, I can give that a go now we're all not doing much due to quarantine. But couldn't get any yeast or bread flour. So yeah, that weren't gonna work. I think you might be able to now. I haven't tried recently because I'm actually trying to go back to losing weight. I think I'm going to be one of these yo-yo dieters throughout my entire life. Because I love comfort food. So the option is either I become one of these 40 stone people or a yo-yo diet. So I've chose the latter. I know people say your relationship with food is your own choice and you don't have to eat for comfort and all that nonsense. I did try in my 20s. I'd done food counselling and all that sort of stuff. No, it's just part of who I am. So I am learning to accept that. There are worse things. I'm definitely not a heroin addict or anything like that. But the GP hates it, I think. Such is the way of things. Yeah. Right. We are halfway through the sticky uppy last prongs. So 2 done, 2 to go. Whoop, see? I know it's really early to talk about it, but I'm starting to think about Christmas. Because this year, I don't think I'm going to be able to go and give presents to people like I would other years. Because I'm not going out and meeting people. Because I ain't about to get long COVID. It sounds too much like the illness I've already got. And I don't think it'll improve my world at all. So, question is, how many presents can you post before it costs you a fortune? That's going to be the interesting part about it all. I'm sure I'll work it out with people, but that's why I'm starting now. I usually frustrate the heck out of all my sisters because I'm always the one that does all the presents way before time. I explain I got to because I'm on next to no cash, and where I'm ill, it's possible I can end up bedridden for weeks, so I can't leave it till the last minute, because if I'm ill at the last minute, then no one's getting nothing. So just is what it is. But kids' toys have gotten so expensive. My nephews, everything they want and like, it's so much more than when I was younger. £10 used to be a reasonable gift, and it's not no more. Oh well. Yeah, so almost there. Now, if you want, you can go with one shade of brown or one or two shades of brown. You're going to have to do a lot more work in the texture department to make it look more interesting if you go in there. But there are trees that don't have so many colours on them. And technically, some of the eucalyptus trees that I've seen pictures of are really pale and not a lot of bark patterning. So I think my koala is going to have to be in a non-eucalyptus tree and just have to lump it, because they look just really plain. It's weird how some trees can do this perfectly smooth bark, but others end up so pretty and with so much pattern. I think my favourite though, have you ever heard of a rainbow eucalyptus? They are stunning. They're in the eucalyptus family. And what happens, they're that boring sort of grey-brown, but as the bark splits open, which it does, it oozes sap. And the sap starts off, I think it's a red colour, and then goes through blues and greens and oranges and all that as it dries. So your eucalyptus plant is all sorts of colours. It literally looks like someone's got paint and splashed it all up a eucalyptus tree. If you can Google search them, they are stunning. I want one for my garden. And apparently they're fine in cold weather. They put up with it brilliantly. So one day I may end up with one. But apparently they do have a big old root system to them, so it's harder to put them in your back garden. What I really want is UK Park to put one in. Wouldn't that be a park in the UK?
Yeah.
Because generally they go for sycamores and oaks and that sort of stuff.
Says London Plains have gorgeous bark.
Yeah?
I think often they pick the trees for ones that don't drop too much on the side.
Yeah, I think it's about how much. Well, I'm not sure whether it's about how much they drop, because conker trees drop everything.
Yeah, but they'll put them in the middle of a park. You don't see them very commonly, say, on streets or anything.
No, I'm talking about in the middle of a park, putting a rainbow eucalyptus.
Yeah, even then there aren't that many conker trees. I mean,
yeah,
Nonsuch Park has one or two.
I know, I get it. They make the ground around them look scruffy, but go for some interesting trees, people. I mean, if it can survive in the UK, I get it. It's not British fauna, and you want to be all preserving and blah 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 blah. Put a rainbow eucalyptus somewhere. That's all I'm saying. If I ever become mayor or something, that would be one of the first things I do. I hear that there are some in the UK. I got to go find one, because I'd love to see one in real life. I've only seen them in photos and they're just so pretty. Right, one more to do and then we're on to texturing. So it moves along pretty quick. I will probably do the foliage the same week that I do the koala, because I think once I've done texturing and got a heart picked out and put on with you all, it's gonna take a while. Now, I know I've got a lot more brown mixed up into different shades than what I'm going to use on this. To me, that is a good thing. I have a set of drawers. I don't know if you've seen the units. They're like metal units, and they've got plastic drawers like that. When you're using plastic with your polymer clay, you've got to do a patch test. Smear a bit of your clay on it. Leave it 24 hours, because some plastics, it starts to melt and they go this sort of... It feels like you've spread Pritt stick under it. Those you can't store your clay in for obvious reasons. But if it survives 24 hours with some clay on it and doesn't melt, you're good to go. And you can then forevermore use that as something for your clay. And yeah, you can... What are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 down.
Says, wow, rainbow eucalyptus looks like something from fantasy land.
I know. Did you Google it? Aren't they awesome? Wouldn't that be amazing if you went into the local park and there were 6 of those stood next to each other?
Says, I can imagine in Rivendell.
I know, right? When I first saw pictures of them, I thought it was a Photoshop job. You know, like you see those people who they share a picture of their cat, but you can tell they put more blue in those eyes. Because there ain't no cat with eyes that level of blue.
Says, yep.
Some Photoshops, some people, they're very clever. And they're very good at making a fake look very natural. And you've really got to be careful. Even me, who is suspicious as heck, I really am, I've still been caught out by stuff. And I do my best to try and vet things before I share them. But no, there are some very, very talented people with computers out there. And I thought, when I first saw that, I was like, no way. But then today I was looking at different colours that lobsters can be. And if they have too much, I think it's keratin or something like that in their shell, they go this royal blue.
Monkey Spaz says, I wonder if you could make a rainbow eucalyptus bonsai.
Yes, do that. Send me one.
That would be so good.
Anyone who sends me one, I will, in exchange, make them something that of their choosing.
If it's
That's a good.
Possible to make.
That's a good deal.
The species of tree.
All trees can bonsai, can't they? I thought it was the process rather than what tree it is. How anyone got started doing that is what fascinates me about bonsai. Someone looked at a tree and went, it's good, but I wonder if I can make it fit in like a 5 centimetre space. Like, what kind of mind
Eagle Monkey Spaz says, yes, that's what I meant.
did that?
Artie says, I will paint one. Eagle Monkey Spaz said, it would take a couple of years, but I will look for seeds.
You can bonsai? Really? I barely can keep a spider plant alive, let alone get a tree to behave itself in such a small and cramped environment. Knowing my luck, I'd get it somewhere like it just before it's at its peak look, and then it will die after I put a lot of effort in. Mind you, my tomatoes came out this year. Me and my mother-in-law have been joint effort growing some, and we actually got through. I mean, we're not like talking enough to make a tomato sauce or anything, but it was tasty. And isn't it amazing how grow your own tomatoes tastes so much nicer than anything you can buy? Right, let's have a quick check. Ooh, can you see? We've got a gap.
I have a yellow maple seed to try first. I need to put it in the freezer. I don't know how that works.
I don't You've lost me already. So you meant to freeze them? Yeah. If you manage it, all the respects, I tell you, because, but I suppose it's like anything. People look at some of the stuff I make and go, oh my god, I can never do that. And you're like, yeah, it's practice. But it's so magical, it's impossible. No practice. Trust me, you can't start out too badly. That's impossible. My first ever piece.
Harry Hedgehog said it was the tomatoes you looked after that did so well.
Thank you. I think that was luck more than judgment, but yay. Right, so we're pretty much covered. I'm just making sure that there aren't no gaps. There's another one there. Plug them all up. Whoops, don't knock the microphone, sorry. There we go. I know it looks weird in the camera because you've got the bottom, but I'm literally just going around upside down and making sure I don't see any white, and if I do, I'm just putting little bits in that gap. Ooh, head spin. Oh, that's just not fun. And I like roller coasters. It's weird how when you know that it's a controlled amount of head spin for a specific amount of time, it's fun. Then when your brain does it off its own back, suddenly it's misbehaving. Not that I'm picky or anything, but I only want my giddy to happen when I specifically say. There we go. Right, we're pretty much all plugged up. Although I tell you now, I will come back to this tomorrow and I'll find a whole lot of other bits that I need to fill in the gaps for. Right, let's get this brown out of the way. And what you're going to do is you're going to come round with a bunch of different shaped tools and start gouging some lines and some creases into your tree. Make sure you're not going all the way through because you don't want to see white. The other thing you can come in with is scrunched up tin foil. Make sure it's not too smooth, so I tend to do that to it a bit. Let's take my filler out and you come round and start to stab at your clay piece with your foil, and that brings a really good texture to it as well. Let's hold that up so I can show you. Just off of those tinfoil stabs. Focus in. Can you see the texture in that gives? Just tinfoil gives you the little shallow ones, but all sorts of metal tools will come in and give you different shapes. And what you're doing is you're smoothing bits into each other and gouging other bits so that it looks like one plant rather than something with lots of bits stuck onto. So let's do the bottom and then I'll show you what I mean.
Evil Monkey's Baz says stratification is the process of subjecting seeds to cold in order to snap them through their dormancy. Lots of tree seeds are genetically programmed to survive through the winter, and then when spring comes they sense the change and sprout into seedlings. With some tree seeds they will never sprout unless they feel that cold and warm cycle, so it artificially create that cycle, thus breaking their dormancy. In other words, you have to freeze them to start them growing.
Awesome. Unless it's one of those ones where it needs fire. Especially some of the Australian tree seeds. 'Cause I've heard of that where it needs a bushfire before it will behave itself and do its thing. Right. I've come in and I put some dents around that bottom. Do you see the difference already? Look at that. And that's just by smashing it with
Evil Monkey
different
says,
shape.
I found rainbow yolk seeds.
You have? Wow. Well, they will grow good in the UK apparently. They've got some of them around Norway and Russia and that neck of the woods. Because I saw someone talking about theirs. So I'm just coming in and I'm really quickly going round and smudging up this tree, blending in some of those lines, doing it very scruffily so it looks more natural. And you can spend as little time or as much time as you want doing this through your tree. You can add bits on so that you've got more sort of a gnarly, bumpy type effect. But just play with it. Come in, texture and play. So for me, around that base is more about what I would be going for. Do you see what I mean? That sort of look. So the other thing I will be doing is you get some of your brown, you bring it out into a kind of point, pinch it flat. You want all these crease lines, they're good. Twist it like so. Then you're going to put that in at the base. And put some roots in. Different colours. You can twist a couple of different colours together if you want. So, like that. The black scales. The bark scales. Oh, yeah. Right, okay. Can you see when you twist a few colours, you end up with that a bit more? And you can...
Fairy Hedgehog says the bark scales really make a difference.
Yeah, it does. And it's so much fun just to stab at some work and it not be ruined.
Mum says dinner will be ready in 8 minutes. Is it too soon to cook your fish?
When do you want to finish, guys? Is it too soon for my mother-in-law to cook me fish? I'm having kippers for dinner.
I don't know how long they take or how long we will cook.
4 minutes to cook. That's
Probably
why I like them.
not worth doing it until we're done then.
Yeah, probably gonna need a bit more time at this. Right, it's up to you how many roots you put in, but I like to put a fair few in because it's even more, that will help keep the structure stable. So I'll do one more around that side. You could, if you were really trying to be fiddly about it, put those stick out bits of wire into some of this root structure, but I think you're more likely to have an unstable piece than putting them into the base and then putting on fake roots like that. So we've got roots. Ooh. And what I'll do is I'm going to go around and I'll texture it all in. Then next week we'll pick out a heart to put on it. I'll show you what I'm talking about when I say we've got hearts to pick out. They're all the hearts that I've found. So we got lampwork ones of different sizes and metal charm ones. So let's hold it up to a camera like this. And it will depend on the size of the trunk and what we want. So we could go big like that. or like that, and we'll back it in a bit of brown clay, or we could go very small and come down to that sort of size. These, thank you Fairy Hedgehog, these are just bits that I collect.
You saw that?
Yeah. I'm thinking I might go for one of the lamp works, mainly because I've not got a lamp work piece already. But do you reckon I should go for a big one like that, or one of the smaller type look like that? It's something for you to have a think about, because we'll have a pick next week. If there's any of them that you particularly like, I know some of them have got loops on, we can cut them off very easily, or embed that in clay. What I'm planning to do is back them with some brown, and then do like a bit of gnarly wood around the outside edge, like that, in different colours, so it does still look like it's part of the tree.
Fairy Hedgehog asks, can lamp work go through the oven?
Yeah, it's only 110 for polymer clay. That's quite a low temperature. Glass melting, I think that's up in the thousands, isn't it? So yeah, it should be fine. Glass, metal,
Yeah.
ceramics,
Not much more than 100C.
most things can go through at around that temperature. It's really quite a cool temperature. But these are old necklaces that I've taken apart from charity shops. So yeah, have a think about it, and we'll have a discussion next week. We'll do that, and we'll do the greenery, and if we got time we'll do the koala. Okay, so I think I am going to stop here because my head's spinning even more, but we got a fair old bit done, and by next week I'll have all that textured in properly. Okay, any questions, you're always welcome to message me or drop a message under a video. I love helping people. I'm not scary. You're not wasting my time. I'm happy to chat. If you like what I do, please like, follow, share it around. My numbers are pretty small, so I really am grateful for anything you can do to build the community and make this more of a thing. Bye Fairy Hedgehog, and bye everyone else, and I hope you have a really good week, and I will be back next Wednesday with this a little further forward. Okay, bye.